What if I told you that while you're holding Ethereum, earning maybe 0%, or even some of you that are staking earning 2 to 3%, exchanges like Coinbase are using your exact same Ethereum to earn 40 to 60% per year and keeping all of the profits? Right now, I'm going to show you 3 different strategies that are earning me 35%, 60%, and even higher returns on Ethereum while you're playing a losing game. And if you guys have been subscribed for a while, you know that we don't like to waste time. As you can see, this is one strategy right over here on Contango doing a 36% ROE. This is another strategy over here on the liquid section of EtherFi doing a 5.9% APY. And then over on Aave, we can use lending and borrowing to generate well above 60% per year. So while you're sitting there hoping that Ethereum just goes up in price, these platforms right here are generating massive returns using the same exact assets that you're holding in your wallet doing nothing. And I don't say that to be mean, I say that to open your eyes, because here's what's really happening. Every single major exchange, Coinbase, Binance, Kraken, they're taking customer deposits and they're putting them into these exact same strategies that I'm about to show you. They're earning 35 to 60% on your Ethereum and giving you nothing or giving you measly returns. Now, with that being said, they operate just like banks. Banks take all of your deposits, go earn a boatload of money on them, and then of course they pay you 2 to 3% per year. It's literally the same exact model done over and over and over again. But the beauty of it this time is that we have the ability to access these opportunities within the primary markets. And just to go even further, Coinbase currently has a market cap of $88 billion with yearly net income of over $2.5 billion in 2024 alone. And this year alone, crypto has completely skyrocketed, so I'd be eager to see how many billions that equals in 2025. But people that hold on exchanges are literally funding their profits while your ETH sits there earning 0. It's the biggest wealth transfer in crypto history, and most people don't even realize it's happening. So I want to show you how you can cut out the middleman and just run these strategies yourself. So the first strategy is going to be on Contango, and it's currently earning roughly a 35% APR, and this is what's called automated looping on Morpho, in this case using RSW ETH and MS ETH. These are both derivatives of Ethereum, basically meaning that they are fully collateralized by Ethereum. Think about it like an IOU. If Bank of America gives me an IOU of $10,000, that basically says that they have $10,000 to back that IOU, and I just have to redeem it at any given point in time. Well, same exact thing goes with these Ethereum derivatives, right? They're essentially versions of Ethereum that have Ethereum in collateral. Same thing with stablecoins, basically. They're versions of the US dollar that have actual US dollars in collateral. Now, basically, you are using a lending and borrowing platform that lets you put up collateral assets and then borrow against it. So we could say, hey, we got $10,000 worth of Ethereum. Put that Ethereum up on this lending and borrowing platform. And then it will allow us to borrow against that Ethereum and basically take out a loan. And that's a perpetual loan. There's no set date. The overall borrow amount just rises over time. So if you start with 1,000 USDC and you borrow, it's going to go up to 1,001, 1,002, 1,003, so on and so forth over time. But you're not just able to borrow USD stablecoins, you can borrow assets like Ethereum. So in this instance, you can essentially collateralize RSW ETH and borrow MS ETH basically. Now by collateralizing, or other words lending out RSW ETH, you're getting 1.2%. But RSW ETH also earns 3.96% natively within its price because it is a liquid staking asset. That's why when we look at RSW ETH right now, it is $4,779 despite actual Ethereum being $4,457. And the simple reason why is because they take that collateral and they basically compound it back into the price. Simple as that. So by lending out RSW ETH, you don't get anything, right? You don't get a yield or anything like that. And the simple reason why is because RSW ETH has a 4% native yield, which means that's going to be compounded within its price itself. That's why when we look at ETH, it's currently sitting at 44.57, but if we were to pull up RSW ETH, it's currently sitting at roughly 47.80. And the simple reason why is because all the yield is put back into the price. So if we can lend out RSW ETH and get roughly 4% per year, and then go and borrow MS ETH and only pay 1.2% to borrow that, then we can effectively create arbitrage. Because whenever we borrow that MS ETH, We can convert it back to RSW ETH, lend that out, borrow more, convert it to RSW ETH, lend that out, borrow more, and repeat the process. This right here is called looping, or otherwise known as interest rate arbitrage. However, using platforms like Contango, they interact with these smart contracts directly, and all we have to do is just simply click a couple buttons and it will take out a flash loan and do all of that for us. So think of this like a money printer, basically, that you just have to feed the blank sheets of paper. The platform automatically lends and borrows in a loop to amplify your returns. You deposit your ETH and it does all the complex work for you, and yes, they do take a small fee for that. Now, to be clear, there are risks with this, and that is depeg risk, which can lead to liquidation, right? Ultimately, what could happen is RSW ETH could go down a little bit too much because of an issue with the overall market and people just selling too much of it and the overall market price dropping. And then ultimately, that could lead to your position being liquidated. And that's why we don't use max leverage. We use a safe amount of leverage. So if we're doing 5x leverage, we're getting about a 15% return per year on this. Still, pretty dang good compared to the 2 to 3% that we get for staking on a centralized exchange, or even just simply staking on something like Lido. Now, I'm showing you 3 different strategies today. That's the first one. And by the end, you're probably going to be wondering which one is right for your situation, how much risk each one has, and how to avoid getting liquidated or even losing money. So I made a dedicated YouTube video breaking down all the top DeFi strategies. It's going to be linked at the top of the description and at the very end of this video. So once you're done watching this one, go check that one out, and it will answer some of the questions about the risk associated. Now, the next strategy is on EtherFi, and all you have to do is deposit into this liquid ETH yield vault that's currently earning a 5.9% APY. They use platforms like Pendle as well as Uniswap v3 in order to achieve this 5.9% APY. Basically, they're running the more complex strategies for you, the stuff that I would run manually in my own portfolio, they're doing for you, and all you have to do is just deposit into this vault. Now, this is a relatively safe strategy because they have heavy allocations to platforms like Aave, as well as stable strategies, as well as some minor allocations to stuff like Reserve or Uniswap v3 that might have more risk associated with it. And these are obviously doing different yields across all of them. But the beauty of this strategy is, once again, all you have to do is just deposit your ETH. They go and they run all the strategies for you, so you don't have to worry about managing it yourself. Now, the advantage here is this is much more conservative. You don't have to really worry about liquidation risk or anything like that. So yes, there's going to be lower returns, but there's also going to be much lower risk. This is kind of like a savings account for your Ethereum, if that makes sense. Now, there is still one more strategy that's completely crushing these other 2 strategies. And that right here is where you use Aave. Now, this is one of the strategies that I'm actually running in my own personal portfolio. I use EtherFi, I use Contango, not those specific strategies, but other aspects of it. But as you can see over here on Aave, I'm pretty heavily invested. I have about $80,000 on here. I have a total of $107,000 in supplied assets, and then $28,000 in borrowed assets. So what I'm doing with this strategy that I'm referring to here is just accumulating some ETH, putting that on the actual lending platform itself. So you could see I have about 50 grand of Ethereum between wrap staked Ethereum as well as just standard Ethereum. And then I'm borrowing USDC. Now you can take this USDC and go and plop it in Ethereum to USDC liquidity pools. So taking a look over at Metrics Finance, if we were to plop, say, $25,000 of USDC in here, we have to actually swap some of that USDC into Ethereum, actually 68% of it, which means we're effectively leveraging up on our Ethereum. And then what's going to happen is, as the price of Ethereum goes up, people are buying our Ethereum in this liquidity pool, therefore meaning that we have impermanent loss. But it's not as important because we still have our full market exposure on our supplied assets, and we still have a profit compared to our borrow, ultimately meaning we're still earning consistent income. And on top of that, we're earning price appreciation profit because our borrow is fixed. And taking a look at this is currently doing a 66% APR. But a consideration, I would not go above 50% loan to value at the absolute maximum. Meaning, if you are collateralizing $100,000 of ETH, you don't want to borrow more than $50,000 of USDC, just in case there are market dips. And ultimately, that's going to cut your returns in half to roughly 30% or so. Now, the other option is obviously fully deploying into Ethereum to USDC. You just have to know that you're going to be laddered out as the market starts to move up because people are buying your ETH and giving you USDC. So there you go. That's 3 different strategies you can use right now on your Ethereum. But here's where most people get stuck. You've got three completely different strategies. 35% automated but higher risk, 5.9% conservative but lower returns, and 60% leverage but complex liquidation management, and of course a little bit harder to implement. So which one do you choose? How much of your ETH goes into each? What happens if ETH crashes? What's your liquidation price? And how do you manage impermanent loss? Most people try to figure this out on their own, make a mistake, and either get liquidated or miss out on massive returns because they choose the wrong strategy for their situation. I can't even tell you how many people I've seen deploy into ETH to USDC because they think it's safe, and then all of a sudden they're wondering why they're all in USDC and they missed a complete Ethereum move of plus 25, plus 30%. Now here's what I've learned after years of doing this. It's not about finding the highest APR, it's about matching the right strategy to your portfolio size, your risk tolerance, and your experience level. A beginner that has 10,000 bucks should not be using the same strategy as somebody with 500,000 bucks. Somebody who can't handle volatility shouldn't be in leveraged positions. Simple as that. But here's the bigger problem. You don't know what you don't know. You might think 60% sounds great until you realize that you have a bunch of impermanent loss and you missed an entire Ethereum move. Or you might play it too safe with 5.9% when you could be safely earning 35% or more based on your situation. So again, these are questions you probably have right now, and the video on screen is going to be able to answer some of those questions for you. So I'd highly recommend you take a look at that if you want to potentially implement on any of these strategies. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, drop a like, subscribe, notifications turned on. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.